just tell us what your name is, what your role is, and then just give us a little bit of background, how you got to the position you are in, just with a few bullet points, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Paul Thompson. I'm the Group CEO of Upmost and was one of the founders, along with my business partner Ian Maidens, of the business back in 2013. In terms of my career history, I remember very early on some advice, I can't remember who it was at the time, but they said basically to have an interesting career you need to have 5 different careers, and I'm on my 5th one. So I started out as an accountant, I trained as an accountant for 3 years, and then my formative years I was an investment banker for about 16 years. I started out as a generalist, but then from the latter part of my career I was a financial specialist, so that's where I really came to financial services world, and that was fabulously enjoyable but incredibly hard work. And then I was lucky enough to be hired by one of my clients, so I joined a listed life company, Britannic, which I steered through a very difficult time in 2003 when the life sector was under a lot of pressure on one of the last financial crises, and positioned it as a closed fund consolidator, merged it with Clive's Resolution One and was the CEO of that business. So that was my 3rd career as a CEO of a large listed group. And then I'd always wanted to do something entrepreneurial, and so I joined a private equity firm, and I was a partner in financial services, running the financial services practice for a business called Pamplona, where we made 2 or 3 investments in financial services. And then came to a time of life where I'd always wanted to sort of start my own business, be an entrepreneur. Ian came available from Resolution 2 that he'd been involved with, which was Friends Life Group. So we decided to set out on our own, just literally 2 of us in an office in 2013. And then we've built the business ever since then. And it's probably grown bigger than I might have thought on the piece of paper in 2013, but it's been a fabulous journey to date, and we're just as excited about the business for the next 5-6 years as we have been over the previous 5 years.
What a great potted history. Some real landmarks, and a little bit like myself. I started out as a financial advisor years ago for Refuge Assurance. Remember these old names?
I do remember. Yeah.
So the deal was announced last week with Quilter International, which was Old Mutual International, which was they're based in Scandia House. They've got a kind of long history of names. How did it feel for that deal to come off? And how happy are you that it's happened? What's it going to mean for Upmost?
Yeah, well, we're incredibly pleased. It's a target we've been tracking for 2 years now, ever since Old Mutual was demerged, and I think it was clear from the demerger strategy that it probably wasn't core, and I think it was also probably clear that they were probably going to sell Quilter Assurance first, and then we were never quite sure how long it would take them to get around to international. In the meantime, we built our business, created a pretty decent footprint in all of the same areas in which they operate. So, we have presence, as you know, in the Isle of Man, Guernsey, Ireland. We have branches, Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai. We sell in all the markets that they sell. But they are a sort of a mirror image of ourselves, but slightly smaller. Customers quite rightly require better service, digital capability, and all of that requires investment, and you need to be able to spread that across a much broader footprint. So we put ourselves in a position to be the best buyer and the best owner of this business. And so it would have been mortifying to me had we missed it and it gone to someone else. This is a combination of 2 or 3 years work to get us into this position. And so, we're both really pleased and relieved to have got to here.
With this, how's it going to impact? Are you going to run it as 2 separate businesses still, or is it just going to merge together and the Quilter brand will go? How's it going to work?
it's going to be completely integrated, but it will take time. We will only have the Utmost brand. But if you think about the sort of timeline, it'll probably take until the end of this year to get regulatory clearance to close the transaction. Then I think we'll move very rapidly on senior management structures, sorting through the overlapping products which we have in each of the markets, and then rebranding. And from a new business perspective, we can probably rebrand straight away. But actually for existing product, it takes quite a while, because you'd be amazed at how much literature and how many times the brand and name appears in all the literature, and that needs all IT keying. That takes a while. But I hope that all of that can be done within the first 9 months of closing. And so if you roll forward to, say, the middle of next year, we should have a seamless product array, distribution, and branding. Then we will look to simplify the what I call the back end of the business, which is all of the different legal entities and the IT platforms. And this is our simplification strategy, which we've had to do quite a lot of in Ireland, because we've bought several businesses there, and we will have overlapping legal entities in all of the branches and in Isle of Man and Ireland, and we'll look to do that. That involves portfolio transfers, which some need core schemes that take 6-9 months. And then we come to the hardest bit of all, which is IT and migration. And, we have 1 or 2 platforms. Quilter comes with 2 main platforms, one which writes new business on and one which is sort of closed. And we'll probably keep one of them. And we need to think about whether we migrate from the other one onto one of our core platforms, or it becomes our core platform. But that probably takes us to the end of 23. And there's a reasonable amount of work also to do to actually separate the business from Quilter Parent, because a lot of the IT is hosted and supported by Quilter staff who will remain with Quilter PLC. And so we have a sort of TSA, which we will look to exit by the end of 23. So there's quite a lot of work to do before it's a fully standalone entity, but it will be ultimately fully integrated into our business, because I think that's what distributors and clients, like to see or understand. It gives us a chance to move all of the servicing up to the high levels that we expect. And you talk about winning awards, we've won many awards on service, and that has actually put us in very good stead during the pandemic, where all of our distributors and clients have been very pleased with how we've managed to maintain that service, and we're seeing the benefit of that through our new business volumes during the first quarter of this year. So it's important to do all of that, because if you don't do that, then it becomes a disparate group, different levels of service, confusing product array, lack of direction, very expensive, and really the whole point of consolidation is to integrate.
Now I remember when Utmost came out as a brand, and so this came from it came from AXA. Yeah, it was AXA.
Yeah.
And how interesting that it's become this, new global giant now in the offshore market.
Yeah.
Just from a quite simple rebrand. How happy are you with the way that that's going? And in terms of your global positioning now, what are the areas that you're looking to really, add some penetration this year and into the future?
Yeah. That's very interesting. As you said, the AXA transaction was probably the seminal transaction, because up until then we had been international life, but in runoff in Ireland, and AXA in Isle of Man was the transaction where we decided to stay open and pursue a growth strategy. We developed the brand from nothing. I remember at the time talking to some of the distributors they're asking about, well, you're going to put lots of marketing behind the brand and everything else like that. And we're quite tight around here, and so we don't have budget for lots of sort of marketing spend and support the brand. But as we've put it across many more businesses, it's becoming hugely recognised in its own right. And I'm very pleased that the brand was actually developed for us by Chaos, who are a really good agency, and it stood the test of time, because you never quite know when you develop a new brand how it's going to feel 3 or 4 years later. And I still feel as happy with it now as I was then. In terms of the mix of the business and the thrust, it's interesting that our current mix will not change at all with the Quilter acquisition. And it's currently about 45% sold into the UK, about 35% sold into Europe, and that's about 25% in the rest of the world. And so we are, strengthening our position in the UK and in Europe. But going forward, my desire is to really increase the rest of the world element. And ideally, in 3 or 4 years' time, I'd like to have a third. So a third UK, third Europe, and at least a third in the rest of the world, Latin America, Middle East, and Asia. And I think over time that will continue to grow, because it feels as if those are the parts of the world where high net worth individuals in terms of numbers and wealth are growing most rapidly, and we need to follow those positive winds. The other shift that we will continue to do, which we have been doing really ever since we acquired Generali Worldwide, and this is to refocus the growth on single premium, high net worth, and away from the residual historic regular premium mass affluent markets, because I just don't think that the product and the gives enough value to the customer. It's expensive from both distribution and a management perspective. Single premium gives people much more flexibility, and we really want to serve the high net worth and ultra high net worth cohorts around the world. We're putting a lot of time and money into the existing products we have, making the investment solution much more flexible. We now have a capability for people to hold complex assets, that people can hold private equity investments, they can hold hedge funds, they can hold individual companies within our wrappers. And what Quilter does in 1 or 2 regions, particularly in Asia and in Latin America, it actually accelerates that growth, because they have some very good products aimed at that market, where we were having to develop our own and bring them on stream. And so this will give us a sort of acceleration in our development. Interesting, we've also both been looking at France as an area where we wanted to really enter the market, and we've both been developing product. And so I think you'll see us doing much more in France. We've done Portugal recently. As I mentioned, we're already quite big in Italy. We're okay in Spain, and Quilter gives us Sweden, which is a market we weren't really in. So there's lots of complementarity in Europe. We're both in the DIFC, both probably, again, moving towards high net worth. And then Latin America is a similar story. Quilter used to do a lot of regular premium across the region, and 2 or 3 years ago moved towards single premium, which is exactly where we want to be. So it will strengthen our position in most markets, but also move us forward 1 or 2 years in terms of our development, which is really nice.
How has the lockdown and the global pandemic affected how you do business internationally? And what do you think you'll keep going forward? Because I think we'll get back to going face to face, but what do you think you'll keep within the business going forward?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And it's just over a year since we went into full lockdown in the UK. I think it was sitting in my mind on 23rd of March, 2020. And one of the big thoughts that went through my mind was that, could we ever contemplate doing an acquisition, thinking about integration in this sort of a period? And I just thought, impossible. And so a year later, to be sitting here having just executed, probably the largest, most complex transaction we've done, and feeling comfortable about it, just shows how we've all become so much more comfortable with executing business through this sort of a media and being dispersed. And I know I talked to my salesman. I was talking to Stephen, head of sales, today, and he's saying he's talking to the guys on the road, and they're saying that we are so much more efficient. We instead of getting in the car, driving all around the country, getting on a plane, flying everywhere, I can see 10 of my contacts in one day through this media. Clearly, with new relationships, it does help to be face to face, but you can do an awful lot of the rest of the business just through this media. We've been very successful with a lot of our technical webinars that we've run, where again, lots more people have turned up to listen to it than they would have. They had to travel to a physical location and spend the time both getting there, signing in, maybe not, listening to bits, not all of it they wanted to listen to. People can dig in and out. So I think, we've really found it, and we've seen with the sales too. With sales, if you ask me what would happen last year at the beginning, I said, I think we're going to lose a quarter of sales. And I thought I was being optimistic. We ended the year pretty much on budget. And so all the partners have learned how to do business as well. And so that's not going back. And all the customers who needed to switch managed to do so. We're getting so many more applications online. We're looking at so much more straight through processing. So I think we, like lots of businesses, will use this as a springboard to really accelerate, and we'll have to invest in digital capability and online, because customers require it. Customers, the same way we've got used to it, all our customers have got used to it. We're all buying many more things, more complex online than we would ever have thought of doing. So I think it's a significant shift that is not going backwards, and will make it, businesses much more efficient and user-friendly, I think.
Well, many congratulations once again on the deal. Thanks for your time today. What an absolute pleasure. Let's hope we can have further chats like this going forward.
Thanks very much, Gary. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for your time.